This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Hey, do you remember the last time the Bison and the Redbirds met on the football field? It was in Normal, Illinois. This is a time lapse. It's about 20 seconds long, but this is over the course of maybe, 15 minutes of actual time? Yeah. Look at that snow. Oh, my goodness.
Such a memory.
They will be playing inside today. The weather will not be a factor during this football game. Hello and welcome.
Football fans that have been watching football all day probably saw the Wisconsin-Illinois game where we turned around and went flashback to Illinois State last year.
Yeah, this is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. I am Alex Egan. She is Beth Hool. We are getting you set for some football today. It's North Dakota State and Illinois State, a very, very good game on tap today, at least what should be a good game. And one of the guys leading the way for one of these teams is going to look maybe a little bit different this week.
Yeah, they have a new quarterback.
Well, I was more referring to Brock Spack. There he is, shaving off the mustache. See, the Redbirds, they beat Southern Illinois last week by a lot. And the bet was if they win by 35 or more, the Spack stash has to go. And this is video that we got from him there showing the Spack stash going away. Now, I haven't seen Brock Spack today, but I imagine the stash is probably back.
He seems like the kind of man that doesn't struggle to grow the stash. Hair. Like it's a pretty natural thing for him. That's maybe one of the things I'm most excited about seeing from this Illinois State team, though, is how quickly and how much growth he has back. I would wager that he probably grows one faster than Easton State.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Do you think it looked better than Easton's did in the playoff run last year? That was a great attempt by Easton State at the mustache, and hopefully they do something fun if the Bison make a playoff run again this year. But first things first, we got to get through this game today. It's North Dakota State and Illinois State, a top 10 matchup between these two teams. It will be taking place out at the Dome, and I know there's one guy who's very excited that this game will be being played indoors because he suffered through that snow last year, and that is Ryan Gellner, who joins us live at the Fargo Dome. Ryan, happy indoor football Saturday to you.
Yeah, sure glad to be inside. I saw some pictures of last year's game, and those are bad memories. We're glad to be inside this week. It should be a phenomenal football game. These are two of the best teams in the FCS, two of the best offenses in the FCS, two of the best defenses in the FCS, and two very similar teams. In fact, how similar are they? Well, let's just run down some of the numbers, guys. They both average about 39 points a game. They both give up about 12 points a game. The Bison run it a little bit better, but Illinois State, they pass it a little bit better. They average between 430 and 440 yards on offense each. They give up between 275 and 280 yards each on defense. Each quarterback has only been picked one time this year. The Bison defense has 10 interceptions. Illinois State has 9 interceptions. Time of possession, as you guessed it, that's the same. Both teams hold it for about 31 minutes a game. So where's the difference in this football game? It comes on third down, and on third down, North Dakota State converts at 46%. Illinois State converts at just 38%. So for me, it comes down for third down. If the Bison can get Illinois State in third and long, I like NDSU's chances. If Illinois State is moving the chains on first and second down, could be an interesting day for the Bison, guys.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And to that point, we'll check in with Ryan throughout the rest of the show and the rest of our crew out there at the Fargo Dome. But to that point, this Illinois State offense, while it's the same guys that we saw last year and the year previous in terms of personnel, they've got a new coach that's back.
Yeah, kind of a funny storyline there. Yeah, This is some familiarity. They've brought back their offensive coordinator who was there in 2014 and 2015, had obviously a great deal of success. Bison fans will remember that they ran into Illinois State in the national championship game in 2014. And so he's obviously had success, took some time off, was a family man for a bit, came back, and they've picked up right where they left off. So they still have the same mentality. I mean, I think that's more of a SPAC stamp of what kind of offense they want to run, and that they're going to be a run-first offense. They're going to be hard-nosed. They're going to, really come at you and shove it down your throat. I think that kind of comes from his ideal of what he's looking for, and obviously Beathard continues that tradition.
Yeah, Kurt Beathard is the OC. What you're seeing here is video from 2015, and some of these faces might look the same. That number 5 at quarterback, that is Trey Roberson. He was obviously one of the reasons that Illinois State. This is Marshawn Coprich, excuse me. That was a stud running back for him. So Now they have a good quarterback, not so much a running quarterback, but a good quarterback, and another stud running back this year. So this Kurt Beathard, he's kind of figured out what he needs in terms of personnel and how he likes to use that personnel.
Yeah, instead of the running quarterback this year, they've kind of got that 1-2 punch that, again, Bison fans will be familiar with from their own game plan. They've got the 1-2 punch in terms of running backs this year. Both of these guys have over 100-yard rushing games, and so they've been able to kind of establish that dual threat that the 2014 Redbirds had, but it was a running quarterback for them at that point.
We'll go into who that guy is as the running back for Illinois State as we go out throughout the rest of the show. And the very interesting story about their quarterback as well. We'll dive into that as well as we move along here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. We're going to step aside when we come back. We'll get to know the Redbirds a little bit more. We'll hear from the voice of the Redbirds. That's next here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. North Dakota State and Illinois State getting ready to tee it off, and that's a man right there. That's James Robinson, the running back for Illinois State, and I
don't know. Are his arms bigger than his legs?
I'm glad I don't have to try to tackle him today. That's that.
Guy is jacked.
And then the quarterback's much skinnier.
just a little bit. Yeah.
James Robinson is going to be a problem for the Bison defense today. We'll dive into that just a little bit as well. But first, as we continue on here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show, well, let's check back in with Ryan Gellner, who caught up with the voice. Words are hard right now. We'll get it.
Gellner.
We'll get it. Yeah, let's go out to Gellner.
Dick Ludke is the longtime play-by-play voice for the Redbirds. And Dick, this should be a really good football game against two teams that are pretty equally matched.
I think so. They're equally matched and they're similar. I mean, they both emphasize the running game. They are both very strong defensively, especially against the run. So whose running game will be more productive? That's one of many questions that you ask coming into this game.
Let's talk about your running game for fans that aren't familiar. James Robinson, 130 yards a game, 9 touchdowns. He is the real deal.
He is. He's not as fast. He doesn't have as much raw speed as some of the better running backs in the league, but what he does have is quickness and the ability to get up to his top speed in a hurry. The other thing he does is run through tacklers. You have to be a pretty good, sound, fundamental tackler to bring him down. The Bison, of course, are good in that area, but they're going to have to be good in that area to stop him. The other thing, Ryan, about Robinson is he has a very capable backup. When Marshawn Coprich was the big guy for Illinois State, he was the whole deal. But Markel Smith can make some things happen too, and that gets Robinson off the field a little bit and makes him more effective when he's on the field.
And North Dakota State can certainly relate with that. They can also relate defensively. Both, like you said, pride themselves on stopping the run.
Absolutely, and pride themselves on stopping anything, but especially effective against the run. And when you stop the run, you force other teams to throw, and the defense knows you're going to throw it, and that makes it easier to stop that part of the game. So, yeah, I mean, one of the questions is how high scoring will this game be? The defenses have been so dominant, but both are powerful offensively too, especially the Bison.
And that we will see. Thank you for your time, Dick. Have a wonderful call today.
Good to talk to you, Ryan.
Guys, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. Beth, they talked about James Robinson there. Let's continue to talk about James Robinson.
He's such a big part of this game and is going to play a huge factor in this one. To put this in perspective for you, James Robinson, we showed you what he looked like without his pads on. He's a 5'10" guy, 220 pounds. To put that in comparison, the closest person we could really is like a Jabril Cox.
Yeah, if you needed like a scout team running back to simulate James Robinson in practice, it's like, hey, Jabril, can you run out there and try to be this guy?
And Jabril's taller than him.
Jabril is taller, but he's about the same weight. Jabril's like 6'3", 230-ish.
And equally a dude.
Yeah, as fast and as quick as this James Robinson. So it would be on the Bison defense to maybe say, hey, go out there and tackle a Jabril Robinson every play.
Jabril Robinson, I like it.
Jabril Robinson.
We'll combine them. Yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah, Jabril Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, this guy deserves all of the credit and all of the conversation that he is garnering around him. He's a plus 100-yard rusher in 4 of his last 5 games for the Redbirds, and he's also the first guy to rush for over 200 yards since Koprich did it in 2015. That was the last time anybody at Illinois State did that. And Robinson did that last week against Southern Illinois. Now, also in that game, which you also heard Ryan and the play-by-play gentleman from Illinois State talking about, that second running back, that 1-2 punch, and that's Markel Smith. Markel Smith had 143 rushing yards last week also. So the two of them combined for over 350 yards last week. That's a dynamic duo.
It was Southern Illinois. It was Southern Illinois
I thought you were
that they went against.
it was
Southern Illinois that they went against. It wasn't like they were going up Northern Iowa. But yes, that is still impressive to have that yardage. The two tailbacks are averaging over 6 yards a carry, over 6.5 yards a carry. So they're obviously
which is something we ourselves were raving about NDSU doing.
Yes. So it will be something that this Bison defense, and we're going to talk a little bit more about these two defenses as well as we go along in the show here, because these two defenses are stout, and these two offenses, they run the football. They run the football well.
They are such similar teams. And in talking to some of the Bison coaches this week, they said that they really overlap each other quite a bit in scouting reports for teams in the Valley, and how similar they see themselves, and why they're such a good team for them to watch film of against other opponents, because they can kind of see a little bit of what they do.
And if it weren't for a blocked field goal as time expired against Missouri State, this is a 6-0, 6-0 matchup we're talking about today. So this is they're very similar teams. Illinois State, a little bit of bad luck against Missouri State when they took their loss, but these are two very, very good football teams. Let's head out to the tailgate line. It was a little chilly out here in Fargo this morning. We had a couple days in the 70s, and then all of a sudden the weather went back to October. So Mike Morgan braved the elements, although I don't think he braved it too much out there in the tailgate lot. Let's check in with him.
He does pretty well.
All right, here we are out in the tailgate section. We've come inside to get a little break from the wind, and I've got a couple of contestants. Let's start out with you. Your name?
Rhonda.
Rhonda, and you are?
Colleen.
Okay, I've got Colleen and Rhonda, and we're playing for a couple of gift certificates. So here we go. Are you ready, Rhonda? You're going first. Our first question: how many points are the NDSU Bison averaging per game so far this year? I'll give you two choices, okay? Is it 39 a game, or is it 26 a game? And you can ask people here for your help.
39.
39, you seem pretty confident.
I think so.
Should she be confident? Yeah! Of course she should. She just won. 39 is correct. There you go. Congratulations. You just won yourself a $50 gift certificate to the True Blue Social Club.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's how easy it is. See how easy that was? Okay. We haven't had anyone get this wrong throughout this year and last year. All right, you ready to go?
Right.
Here's your question. Through the first 6 games of this year, who leads the NDSU Bison in interceptions? Is it Jabril Cox or Fred Cox?
Jabril Cox.
Jabril Cox. Do you know who Fred Cox is?
Yeah, he plays football somewhere.
He plays football
for the Vikings years ago.
He used to play football for the Vikings. But you're right, it was Jabril Cox, so she's correct there. So congratulations, you just won yourself a $50 gift card to Lucky's 13 Pub.
Thank you.
That's easy enough, huh?
Thank you.
All right, we've got winners. They continue to happen out here in the tailgate section. Let's hear a cheer for the Bison. Go Bison! And let's take it back to the studio.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. That's not James Robinson, but it might as well be tackling. There's Brock Lesnar, the UFC WWE star, in the house today to take in some Bison football. We continue on the pregame show right after this. Whisper.
Incomplete pass.
Incomplete pass.
Pocket. Pocket.
Body.
Pocket. Fourth down conversion.
Fourth down conversion.
Yards after catch.
Yards after extra.
Yards after catch.
Yards after catch.
University drive.
University. Say it again, say it again.
University drive.
University drive.
Fair catch.
Fair catch.
Power.
Power.
Head coach. Head coach.
Head coach.
Red zone.
End zone.
Okay. Look at him.
How we did?
Hey, we did good. we got the rolling.
Let me tell you, give them 2 more seconds and they had end zone too.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Red zone.
Look at the young guys showing them what's up. That's the leader in the clubhouse by far.
By far.
I was very upset when I had to edit
asked you,
that.
did they have music up?
I could hear it. I could hear it when I was editing, so you could hear the music.
They made the rest of the team look foolish.
It made them, yeah. That's
a hard game.
That's a very tough game, and they got some of the tougher ones too.
Yeah, university drive.
Yeah.
We said it's all like football terms, and we threw university
Football,
drive at them.
NDSU,
Yeah.
Fargo. Yeah, we tried to throw some tough
Well
ones in
done,
there.
boys.
Yeah.
Well done.
Michael Tutsi, Josh Hayes, well done. Let's go back out to the Fargo Dome. We check in with Ryan Gellner and our Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine injury report.
Thank you, guys. Dr. Bruce Pyatt is here, and we are once again talking hamstrings. It's an injury that just seems to pop up.
Boy, we see it a lot this time of year, and these kind of sports where you have quick acceleration, quick deceleration, we see it quite a bit. And the problem is it can be so debilitating to an athlete and really take them out of action for an extended period of time. So we're much better off if we can find ways to prevent the injury than if we have to deal with it once it's occurred.
And you are holding a newer tool that has come into the medical world, and you see these all over the place, not only at the gyms, but people put these foam rollers in their house. Athletes use them as well.
Yeah, we do see it a lot, and there's still a little bit of lack of good scientific data to support what it's going to do, but the whole theory and idea behind it is it's trying to promote what we talk about being a myofascial release, which means if you look at any of your muscles, they're encased in a fascial or a connective tissue lining. And whenever you have kind of athletes who are training and performing, there's going to be injuries that occur, and that injury can cause some scarring in that fascia. And so you'll see a lot of the athletes trying to do what they can to try to help assist them to get back on the field without that pain and that potential for re-injury with it. And so they use these foam rollers. The whole idea of them is you roll it over the muscle, you find a spot where it's really painful, you put a little bit of an extra stretch on that, and that's hopefully breaking down the scar tissue in that athlete.
The foam roller like this you can buy in a lot of different places, but you can use it lower back, upper back, hamstrings, calves, and you simply lay on it and roll back and forth.
Exactly. And really what you do is you take a muscle group, you roll it over the muscle group, you identify that spot where there is pain, and you hold it in that spot for about 15-20 seconds to keep kind of a constant stretch on that tissue, breaking up the scar tissue and the adhesions at that point.
The technology continues to evolve, and athletes just reap the benefits off these, don't they?
Yeah, I think they do. And I think the thing to really remember about this is a neat technique and a neat thing that a lot of athletes are using, but still remember that flexibility, stretching, and doing a lot of preventative strengthening where you're loading the muscle as you're stretching it is still by far the best way to prevent your injuries.
Good stuff. It's not just about getting injuries, it's about preventing them as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Pyatt.
Thank you very much.
Guys, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. Let's take a look at the Sanford Orthopedic Sports Medicine injury report. We have on here a couple defensive players, one offensive player. We knew about these guys after the Western Illinois game. Rob Grimsley with a hamstring. He is going to give it a go, as we've been told. Bruce Anderson with the hamstring. They were hopeful that he would be able to go, and we have him listed as out. We don't think he will see the field today.
No, not expecting to see Bruce, and I think this is even more preventative. I don't know if it's. I think if they really needed Bruce, they might be. You know, he would certainly want to give it a go.
Right.
But I think we've got enough running backs in the system that I feel like the coaches. I'm assuming, and that's my assumption there, just because they do have that depth.
Yes, and Michael Tutsi suffering a hamstring injury as well. This
Which
one
is now concerning.
Yeah, that's interesting because Tutsi is the backup to Grimsley there at the strong safety spot. So not sure what the Bison defense is going to do in terms of how they're going to rotate that in, or what guy will go in case Grimsley can't give it a go, or Grimsley can't go because Tutsi, we've been told,
if he re-aggravates it, which oftentimes happens with muscle injuries. Anybody who's strained any sort of muscle can certainly attest to that. And we kind of talked about some of the possibilities.
Yeah, what do? Do you bring in Jalen Wimbush? Do you move James Hendricks over to that strong safety side? Certainly something that we're going to keep our eyes on throughout the course of this game is the health of Rob Grimsley and who fills in should Rob re-aggravate that hamstring injury. Let's turn our attention to the quarterbacks that we'll be seeing playing today. And, of course, for the Bison, 12 again. Easton Stick coming off of a decent game. The number that I still enjoy, touchdowns to interceptions. He is taking care of the football. 17 total touchdowns for Easton. Which is another thing that we've been talking about all week in the sports office is how much does Easton Stick play a factor in this game? And we've both kind of said it's not necessarily a matter of Easton Stick winning this football game for NDSU. There's so many other factors that are going to come into play in this one that it's not about Easton winning this football game. I think it's really about Easton just protecting the football. And it would be nice for Easton to have a few more weapons to throw to as well. We've seen Darius Shepard be his top target this year. Dallas Freeman has gotten a few targets as well. But last week, the passing game was kind of a touch and go there for a little bit because Western was doing some things to cover Shep. So finally, a team kind of gave Shep the credit he's due and finally put a guy on him or two. And so he felt some of that pressure. There was one throw that I'm sure Easton would like to have back, but they've kind of had to challenge. They were challenged a little bit last week, and I don't necessarily think it's anything to worry about. No cause for concern here. Just the Bison need to find something. Let's take a look at who the Redbirds will be throwing out there today, and it's a different guy than the guy we've seen the last 2 years. Jake Colby lost his job to Brady Davis, who is a transfer from Memphis, and he's coming in and lighting things up for the Redbirds. Yeah, this kind of really surprised me when I found out that this happened at Illinois State, just because Colby had been a mainstay for him, and while he wasn't the quarterback they had before him in Robeson, but he was doing a good job. He was doing what he was asked to do, and they were having success. But this transfer from Memphis, he's got a great arm. The NDSU football coaches, the defensive staff has talked about how great he is. They say he just kind of maybe needs a few more reps to really light it up and become scary. And the guy he's replacing, there's a lot to be said about the character of Jake Colby. And I know he's on the opposite team, but there's a lot to be said about the character of Jake Colby. He had 23 career starts, did Colby, and then he lost his job going into his senior year. That's not easy, but Colby's still sticking around, and he was the one who started the bet with the stash. Well, let me tell you, Alex, Jake Colby is from an outstanding town in the state of Illinois called Naperville, and he's not just a Naperville kid, which makes him high character. He's also a Naperville Central alum, and that's the best high school in Naperville and really the entire Chicagoland area. So it just speaks to the upbringing of that fine community and people who have come from there. They're a humble group as well. Where are you from, Beth? I'm from Naperville. Okay, we move on. Let's go out to the Dome. When we step aside, we'll come back and we'll join our guys out at the Dome. That is next here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. Just explaining why. Okay.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Back inside the Fargo Dome, North Dakota State and Illinois State, along with Lee Timmerman and Brian Sean. My name is Ryan Gellner, and guys, we are in for what could be a very good football game this afternoon.
Yeah, no question. Two teams that really value the football, value possessions, like to assert their physicality both in the offensive and defensive lines. It's going to be interesting to me to see which offensive line can try to establish the ground game first, because whoever gets ahead is going to have a distinct advantage and put the other team in a situation they don't want to be in. That's playing catch-up, having to throw the football.
And Brian nailed it, Lee. It's all about the run today.
It is, but you also have to watch the screen passes from the NDSU perspective. Obviously the teams the Bison have played, starting with the Jackrabbits, have had really success in that screen game as well. So it's a pass. It's kind of like a run, but that's something that the Bison have to look for today too, and play it better than they have the last handful of weeks.
Let's get to our Dakota Magic Casino keys to the football game. And they're just that. Number one is stop the run. The Redbirds go as the run goes. Their whole key, Brian, is to run the football. They've got James Robinson, but they've got a whole lot more than just that.
Yeah, they really do. And they do such a good job, I think, especially with the left side of their offensive line. Very athletic. They like to pull their guards in particular on perimeter runs. And the biggest thing, too, with Robinson is he's a big guy. He's physical, but he is very, very fast. I think that sometimes gets underestimated. He can run away from you, and he can break tackles, so he's a dangerous guy anytime he touches the football. His backup, Markel Smith, ain't bad either. He can start for a lot of Valley teams.
Our number two Dakota Magic Casino keys to the football game is simply steal one. The Bison have forced 14 turnovers. They've scored 66 points off those turnovers. Chris Kleiman stressed earlier in the week, we have to find a way to steal a score or steal a short field, and that seems like that would make sense for the Bison.
It certainly does. You just think back to the game that was played in the Snow Bowl last year. What was and it's not ironic that we're showing the guy who made the big play last year. It was Jabril Cox that had that interception that kind of turned the game and helped steal the game. And who is it going to be today? That's the fun part of sports, is we don't know, but whoever comes up with that big defensive play might be the one that ends up, going on to win. But I know last year in all that snow, that was a key interception.
Our third key to the football game, brought to you by Dakota Magic Casino, is throw it and catch it. We're not just talking Shepherd. We need names like Freeman, Watson, Sproles. If those guys get involved, you have to feel good for the Bison today.
And even the tight ends, Ellefson and Jensen, I think those guys are also going to be critical. We have not seen the Bison tight ends get real involved. Between Jensen and Ellefson, just 9 receptions on the season, but in red zone territory, those guys are huge targets, have shown the ability to make the play. And most importantly, Ryan, they have to make the catches on third down. That is the key down for NDSU in that 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. They got to find a way to move the chains and keep their offense on the field.
Lee, it's hard to find a negative on Easton Stick, but 56% Bison coaches and Easton himself would like to have that number higher.
Yeah, that's lower than his career average, and you're right. Today might be an opportunity where they have a chance to do that in the quick game. So if you're going to throw some passes, maybe over the middle between the linebackers, so some quick hitters to the outside, you need that completion percentage up there. So yeah, today would be a good day to try to bump that well into the 60s.
Brian, Illinois State offensively, they're not real fancy. We're not going to see a ton of motion or sweeps. They'll run it at you. The quarterback doesn't look to run a lot. It's kind of old school football.
It's old school football, and when we talked to the North Dakota State coaches, talked to Nick Gazer this week, who's the defensive tackles coach, and he said it's almost like going against our guys in fall camp in the spring again, and sometimes it's so hard for defensive linemen because they get taken out of games when there's a lot of spread and a lot of motion. Where this is a game that really engages those guys. They know Illinois State's going to run it right at them. Who's going to hold up best throughout the course of the 60 minutes? We're going to find out here in just a little bit.
We've talked about third down being a key on this. If it's on the quarterback Davis for Illinois State, he's got a big arm, but maybe that's about it.
I think his feet are better than he has shown, and from the people that I've talked to down in the Bloomington Normal area this week, they said he's starting to gain a little bit more confidence in his ability to use his feet to try to gain a few things off further down the field on the ground. He is not a quote-unquote running quarterback, so to speak, but he has the ability to do that. He's shown it a little bit more, but I tell you, when there's guys in green and gold uniforms chasing you, sometimes you're going to run and you have no choice.
Things get a little interesting when you're getting chased by this big Bison defensive line. It should be on paper one of the best games North Dakota State has had, especially in this building this year, and we'll see how the Bison match up against Illinois State. It is the premier game in the FCS this week. We will talk to the Bison head coach when we come back inside the Fargo. Man, that looks good. "26 minutes from kickoff here inside the Fargo Dome." Welcome back in. In this week's Herdline News, it's all about the defense. NDSU leads the Missouri Valley Football Conference with 21 sacks, which is 9th in the nation. Cole Karts and Greg Menard lead the way for the Herd with 4.5 sacks all time. Menard now in sole possession of 4th place on NDSU's all-time sack list. He has 33 sacks, 8 off the all-time lead. The Bison average just over 3 sacks a football game. The Bison are tied with Weber State and Colgate in turnover margin, with NDSU sitting at plus 10 turnovers. The Herd have scored 66 points off of 14 turnovers. Coincidentally, Illinois State, they're not that far behind. The Redbirds have scored 31 points on 11 opponent turnovers. And speaking of turnovers, James Hendricks, or should we call him James Hendpicks, has 2 interceptions last week at Western Illinois, and he was the Missouri Valley Defensive Player of the Week in a 34-7 win. And just look at some of his athleticism on some of these plays. Here's his second pick on the goal line, James Hendrick, 2 in a row. He was named the Missouri Valley Defensive Player of the Week for the Bison. The Bison D, they will have to hold tight once again. I talked to the head coach, Chris Kleiman, about just that, how the Bison D goes up in another premier matchup. Coach, it is another huge test for your defense. Today, it's all about stopping the run.
Yeah, it really is a mirror image of ourselves. They want to run the football, control the clock. They have a big offensive line that'll get on you, and then two really good running backs that we have to do a great job of tackling. Describe their running game a bit for us. It's not really speed and clouds of dust and things like that, but they can somehow do it effectively. Well, it's really efficient, and both backs break tackles, and they run over people, and they make you miss. I've been so impressed with, everybody talks about Robinson. They have two really good running backs back there, and they complement each other well, and I know they don't want to get into a third and long game, so I think we have to be able to win on early downs. I know you have focused on simply tackling. How do you do that in practice? Well, Sabian Clark gets hit a little bit as a scout team running back and runs hard and does a really good job for us, and we have to concentrate and focus on wrapping up, and it's going to be a different guy out here. He's a special player. Offensively, of course, you rely on that Bison offensive line. You'll want to run the football as well. Yeah, we really do. I don't know if that's going to be inside, outside. I don't know if it's going to be the quarterback. It could be a combination of everything, but we have to be able to sustain blocks. They're a really big, long, athletic defensive front, and so for us to have success, we have to be able to sustain blocks. Big one inside the Fargo Dome today. You'll rely on that crowd. Oh, absolutely. The crowd's going to be huge today. I know our guys are excited to be back home. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. Coach, best of luck, and we'll see you at halftime. Appreciate it. Thanks. It will be an electric atmosphere here inside the Fargo Dome, and if you're at home, you are in for a treat. It's the number 8 team in the nation against the number 1 team in the nation, and we've got it for you right here statewide. We go back to our Fargo studios to finish up this show, get you ready for some football.
Welcome back inside our Fargo studios. The Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show rolls along. We're going to check back out at the Fargo Dome. Mike Morkin standing by in the tailgate lot. Mike?
All right, thank you so much. We're back out here in the tailgate section, and I want to show, first of all, this crowd that's gathered here. We've got quite an impressive grouping here. Yep. They are inside where it's nice and warm, and there's a windbreak, and I've got my next 2 contestants. Let's start with you. Your name?
Jake Heisler.
Jake Heisler, and where are you from, Jake?
From Candu, North Dakota.
Candu, North Dakota. That would be where the Cubs are from, correct?
The Bearcats now.
The Bearcats now. I just dated myself. Okay, here we go. Here's our question. Including today's game, how many times have Illinois State and NDSU played? Is it 11 or 4? 11 or 4, and the crowd can help if you want them to.
Oh, I better get some help.
Okay, so what do you guys think? Double ones, they're saying.
Go with 11.
11 is correct. A good crowd to be with. All right, congratulations. You just won yourself a $50 gift card to Lucky's 13.
Well, thank you.
I would say you better take some of your friends with you. Okay. All right, that was easy enough, wasn't it?
You did good.
Your name, please?
Becky Willits.
Becky, where are you from?
West Fargo.
West Fargo. That's Packers. I know that.
No, that's the Mustangs.
The Mustangs. Excuse me. All right, I stand corrected. 0 for 2. Here we go. North Dakota State has the longest active winning streak in the FCS with how many victories dating back to last November? Is it 12 or is it 9? And you too can ask the crowd.
12. Is it 12?
12? And you're sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Sydney, right? Okay. Sydney says 12. What do you say?
We're going to go with 12.
You're going to go with 12, and that's a good thing because that's what the answer is. It is 12. Nice job. And thanks to Sydney, you win yourself a $50 True Blue Social Club gift card. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating. How about a big cheer as we take it back to the studio? Go Bison! Woo!
Mike getting his woo girl on there.
So many things to enjoy about that. We're going to have to start quizzing Mike Morkin on
high school mascots. Yeah. He got it wrong twice there. Well, I mean, he wasn't wrong on the first one.
He wasn't wrong on either of them.
That's true. All right, let's move on. We'll move on from Mike's mascot Let's go to our Bobcat heavy lifting report, and today we have singled out Greg Menard, and obviously the one thing that we have in there is something that you hear Chris Kleiman say all the time, and that is
football is a 60-minute game.
The cup. No, well, that too. He does say that. Football, 60 minutes to play. That's what it is, Beth. Keep the cup is the first one, and basically what he means by that is maintaining the edge there, making sure that these running backs, when they get ahead of steam, do not get outside of the tackles, basically, because they are a load to bring down. And then we also say pressure Davis. This Davis kid, he is a Memphis transfer, making his debut in the Fargo Dome. Now, I don't want to make too much about him having never played in the Fargo Dome, but he has never played in the Fargo Dome before.
No, and it certainly plays a factor. It's something to talk about. And in all honesty, some of these other guys haven't played here either, because they've got some youth on this team as well. And we single out Greg, but really it's this defensive, the whole defensive line really has their work cut out for them.
And really, it's the defense in general. You heard the guys talk about, you heard Ryan talk about out at the Dome, this matchup between the two defenses. We've been talking about it all show long, really. And let's take a look at the opportunistic defenses that are going to take the field today. The turnover margin, the Bison are +10. That's second in the nation. Illinois State is +9. That is sixth in the nation. And then the big one is the points off of turnovers. NDSU is capitalizing. They have 66 points off 14 turnovers. Illinois State, they are also capitalizing. Anytime you can get any points off of a turnover, it's a good thing. So 31 points off of 11 forced turnovers. So these two teams take advantage of the other team's mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely, and they cause a lot of mistakes for a lot of these teams. But, you know, when you really break this down and you look at it, you look at these stats, you look at the numbers. In Illinois State, the Redbirds, they are top 10 in the nation, or top 10 in FCS in 5 different categories of defensive statistics. That's better than NDSU is right now. But I can't help but look at it and think, but who have they played? When it really boils down to it, who have they played? The Bison started the Missouri Valley Conference schedule off with SDSU, Northern Iowa, Western Illinois, and now Illinois State. They've got arguably the 4 of the 5 best teams behind themselves at the beginning of their schedule. And so their defensive numbers and these statistics and what they've been able to do has been against the best of the best. And it's not just the best in the Missouri Valley. These are some of the best teams in the nation when it comes to FCS football. And I can't help, and I don't want to discredit, because their numbers are good and they have done a lot of good work, and watching them on film, they look good. But I just can't help but look at it and go, Southern Illinois, Missouri State. I know Missouri State is good right now.
Yes,
they've got the wins, but who have they played? And it hasn't shaken down yet. I just can't put a ton of stock in these statistics for Illinois State just yet.
So Illinois State still has to play South Dakota State. They still have to play Northern Iowa. And, of course, today they still have to play North Dakota State. So that will, as a lot of people like to say, water finds its level. I think this Illinois State team is good, but I think they will find their level, that they may not be this top 10 defense that they are based on who they've played so far.
Absolutely. And in talking to Nick Gazer, the defensive line coach, and to just the Bison defense in general, James Hendricks talking about it this week, they're confident as well that the Bison defense is confident that they're the best defense when they're playing their best. And they talked a little bit about that this week.
I think that we're confident we're the best defense in the nation when we play really well, and that's just a matter of us going out there and playing, and we know our offense is going to do their job against this defense, and we got to do our part.
There's so many crossover games where we end up watching Illinois State's defense, and you know, Coach Riley will come in, hey, what do you think of their D-line? They're pretty good. They got some good guys up front. They got some guys that can run around. They got some playmakers, you know. So there's no doubt. You know, we want to find out who the best defense is, and we let our guys know that too. It's going to be a big challenge on both sides of the ball.
And in combing through some of these numbers, what really stood out to me that puts NDSU that much further ahead. I know Gellner talked about third down conversions for the offense. On the defensive side of the ball, for me, it's the success in the red zone and what NDSU has been able to do. Of opposing teams getting inside the 20, only 8 times has a team this season gotten inside the 20, and they've only scored 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals out of those 8 times inside the 20. I mean,
we saw last week James Hendricks picking off somebody on the goal line there. That's what the Bison do.
They're extra lethal there.
Yes, the Bison have been very good at buckling down when they get inside the red zone, and really before the red zone, too. To only allow 8 times throughout the course of 6 games, are you kidding me?
To get inside that 20, it's just so impressive, and I think that really sets them apart in this situation. And then on the opposite side of it, when you're looking at red zone success, you have to look at the Bison offense as well, which I think is another part that NDSU just has as another benchmark over this Redbird team that really separates them, and that the Bison have converted 23 of 25 red zone chances with 20 touchdowns inside that zone.
So, again, to put that in perspective, 25 times into the red zone for the Bison, 20 touchdowns. 8 times the other team has gotten into the red zone. 8 times this season the other team has gotten into the red zone, and they're only getting, what was it, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns?
Three touchdowns, 2 field goals.
Yeah, so the Bison defense, we knew kind of going into this season that the Bison defense was going to be the group that was going to carry this team and be probably the better of the 2 sides of the football. It's really coming to fruition over this, especially over Valley play, that this Bison defense is real, and
they're forced to be reckoned with.
They are good.
Yeah, they are very good. They are worth the hype that was talked about with them, and they continue to prove it each and every week. And this is one of those games that I am so excited to see, because this is one, when you put them on paper, this is a comparable team. We've talked about it. You've heard the coaches talk about it ad nauseum, really, how similar these teams are in every aspect of their desire to play the game. And I think this is really going to separate the Bison from the pack and really be able to show you, if they play football like they can, this will separate them from the pack and show you just how good of an NDSU football team this is.
So to recap, both teams' defenses, very good. Illinois State hasn't played anybody yet. That's what we're saying.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
What
I mean, they have an FBS win, which is big, and that's to be credited. They've got
Colorado State.
FBS wins in back-to-back years, but you are our resident Colorado guy. I mean, is that a good win?
It's an okay win. Colorado State is not very good this year, and there's a guy in town that will not like me saying that. But they're okay, but to have an FBS win, anytime you pick up one of those, it's a good thing for the program.
Especially with a new quarterback.
Yeah, especially with a new quarterback. 6 minutes, just under 6 minutes to go on our Coors Light countdown clock. We're going to step aside. We come back, we'll give you our final thoughts, and then get you out to the Fargo Dome for some football. That's still to come here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Just over 3 minutes to go on our Coors Light countdown clock before we send you out to the Fargo Dome for North Dakota State and Illinois State meeting up here in week 4 of Valley football play. Let's go out to the Dome and get the final thoughts of the guys who will be on the call.
I want to see if the Bison defense can win on 1st and 2nd down and put this thing in the hands of Illinois State quarterback Brady Davis on 3rd down. Can Davis beat the Bison on 3rd down? I want to see that, because I think 1st and 2nd down for the Bison D is absolutely huge today.
All right, I think my final thoughts going into this game is to see how the North Dakota State running game and rotation goes. With Bruce Anderson questionable today, could that mean more reps for a guy like Adam Cofield or Ty Brooks? Excited to see how the Bison deploy all the running backs today.
Well, you picked running game. I'll pick passing game. I think it's going to be interesting to see how effective the Bison are through the air. The Illinois State linebackers, they think they can pick on them. They have one corner that has given up a ton of yards. So I think the Bison have an opportunity in maybe some of those early downs to have a chance in the passing game to surprise the Redbirds a bit.
All right, thank you very much, guys. We heard Ryan Gellner talk about the defense. We heard Brian Shawn talk about the running game for the Bison. We heard LT talk about the passing game for the Bison. I'm going to talk about the special teams, because that's where I think these two teams are separated. It's the special teams, and specifically Garrett Wegner as the punter. And I know that the punter, you don't want to see him get on the field, but let's be real, it's football. You're going to have to utilize this guy. Wegner is averaging just over 42.5 yards per punt. Those are those hidden yards that Chris Kleiman likes to talk about, and that could be huge in a game where points and yards might come at a premium. Field position could be a big thing. So I think Garrett Wegner will have to have a big game today for the Bison. When he's used, he needs to be on point.
And that field position is so vital, because both of these teams have good kickers who have, outside of a blocked kick, which wasn't the kicker's fault for Illinois State, they both have good kickers that can take advantage of a good field position if the team can't get inside that red zone that we've talked about. And so, you know, I think you guys have really kind of worked our way around the horn, and ultimately it comes down to the Bison being able to play a complete football game out there. And I think I'm really interested to see how the defense responds, how actually ready Robbie is to go, and how the Bison are able to attack this, because you can't sell out the run game for the passing game. So how are the Bison going to be able to really handle this, because Illinois State can throw the football just as well as they can run the ball.
Absolutely. You said that you want to see the Bison play a complete game for how many minutes?
60 minutes of football.
60 minutes in a football game. 25 seconds left on our Coors Light countdown clock before we ship you out to the Fargo Dome. It is number 1 and number 7. North Dakota State and Illinois State should be a doozy.
A lot of people really excited for this one because everyone wants that good competition. We've talked about it throughout the non-conference schedule. This is what you've been asking for. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
We'll see you at halftime. For now, we send you out to the Fargo Dome.